G'day YouTube and welcome back to RC Construction. I'm Maury. We have an upgrade show for you today. These are a few things that we had bought in. These are excavator parts. So once again we are looking at upgraded bucket for the excavator. We also got ourselves a couple of brand new hitches for the excavator bucket connections. So let's unwrap these and see what we got. Very well packed, which is great. Now the bucket itself, this is what they would call a mud bucket. So let's go ahead and take a look at the dimensions and the sizing for this particular bucket. Well put together, steel, painted well. Liking the looks of this, much larger than normal bucket. This is the new upgraded mud bucket. Comes in at 14.5 centimeters long, 7 centimeters deep, 7 centimeters high. So that gives us 14.5 multiplied by 7 multiplied by 7 divided by 2, which gives us 355 cubic centimeters. So this will be my 350 bucket. To compare that with the general purpose bucket that you get with the machine, this will come in at 700 wide, 600 deep, and 700 high. So 6 by 7 by 7 divided by 2 gives me 142 cubic centimeters in the bucket. Alright, we'll take a look at the hitches now, see what we've got. This first one is the manual hitch. So these get attached to the end of the dipper arm on your excavator. This one here will operate manually. So it's a spring operated machine. You've got the little tongue there. The one part of the bucket goes into the hooks, and then using that spring you're able to attach the other pin from the bucket on and off your machine. This saves you having to screw and unscrew if you're going to change your buckets over in your machine, if you're going from different types of digging, if you're going from the mud bucket, which is what it's going on there now. You can see it fits nice and neatly and then easily to unclip, and then you can clip your GP bucket on or any other attachment that you've got. The second one of these hitches that I bought was a electronic hitch. So this one here should allow you to hitch and unhitch the buckets without actually having to touch your machine. So similar configuration to the previous one, but it actually has an electronic tongue on the hitch. So you can plug these in to any of your excavators that have an auxiliary connection on them. Now you usually find that in the dipper arm, plugging in through the jack just there, and then the tongue will go forward and go back, allowing the hitch to hook and unhook onto the bucket. Alright, we shall pop that away and see if we can't get this hooked up and make it work. Very nice looking bucket. I like that bucket. So here we are now. We've got the Cat 330 excavator and the electronic hitch. I've already plugged the hitch into the auxiliaries on this machine and made sure that the pin does activate and deactivate. Few of your basic tools that you're going to need, your Phillips head screwdriver and a good pair of needle nose pliers. We'll be able to fit that hitch just right on there on the end of the dipper arm and connected it to the ram, which activates the curl on the bucket. So let's get this undone. They are very tiny little screws, so you need to be very gentle when you're working on the heads of these. Make sure you've got a good fit. There we go, now we've got the right tool on it. So we'll get the bucket head off. Now this one was a little difficult to get undone. The very top of the bucket there is a additional sort of lip on the screw there. So the nut will actually countersink into that section when you put the pin back into it. So we had to get a hold of that well and make sure that we didn't thread it as we were taking that off. So we'll put the end of the ram back on and put that back together again. I found it was that easy to do when you're out on site. Yeah, I've sped these parts up for you guys. The automatic hitches came with additional nuts and screws with them, so I'm able to have both my buckets set up with pins permanently in them. This allows much easier to be able to change them over. And I can highly recommend, if you're doing this, before you tighten them up extremely tight, that you test all your fittings and all your connections and make sure everything works properly before you have a go at stitching those nuts up nice and tight. This became very apparent when I first started to try to hook this bucket on, and you'll see just coming up the troubles that I was having. I used the original pins that were at the end of the excavator and put them back into the bucket. What I didn't notice was that this front pin that I'm trying to hook onto now was not perfectly round. It had a small lip along the edge of the pin. So when I tried to hook onto the bucket itself would not freely swing inside the hitch. So the back pins couldn't pull up. Not a big drama. Just swap that pin that had an edge on it out and put another pin in, but it did confuse me for a little bit. So for those that have been in and on excavators, you would curl your bucket right up and then activate your auxiliaries and get your bucket pin or your tongue of your bucket to hold the second pin. And there it is. We'll try to release the bucket. And once again, I ran into the same problem where that little lip on the edge of that screw was stopping the bucket from being able to spin freely inside the hitch. There we go. We'll see if we can get this one hooked up without having to touch it. A bit of manual lining up there, and curl your bucket up underneath. And if we activate the hitch, the bucket should now be held in place. A little pressure there on the ground to make sure your bucket and your hitch is connected properly. Very happy with that. So when you're out on the site, you'll be able to have your buckets on the side there. Excellent work. Now, just see if it's a little hard to see on this video, but I'll try and bring it over nice and close to you. If you keep your eye on the small shiny section there where the arrow is, As I activate the tongue, you'll see that section will slide up, and that's the actual tongue of the hitch, which clamps onto the bolt on your bucket, or your bucket pin. So thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this upgrade video. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like. We'll see you next time. RC Construction.